we can't keep doing what we're doing. This is not just a one dry summer deal. This is a culmination of the last 3 years, really, 3 to 4. We've just had low commodity prices and inflation has drove up our input costs dramatically. There's only 2% of us in the country now. And so when we lose another big portion of that, there's not going to be enough people to feed us. We love what we do, but we got to feed our family in the process.
In Big Orange Country, we live for big moments, but we know there are surprises along the way. When you need help with auto, some peace of mind for your home, or you're preparing for the next chapter in life, Farm Bureau Insurance of Tennessee is there for you. That's why I trust Farm Bureau Insurance of Tennessee, the official insurance of the Balls. Tennessee Insurance for Tennessee Life.
Not funny, guys.
Well, joining us today is Todd Littleton, farmer here in Gibson County, and actually a member of the Tennessee Farm Bureau Board. Thanks for joining us today, Todd. Beautiful day today.
It is my pleasure to be here with you today.
So you are a third-generation farmer here in Gibson County. Tell us a little bit about your farm and what you grow here.
That's correct. I'm third-generation corn, wheat, and soybean farmer. Occasionally we'll have some cotton, depending on the market. Primarily corn, wheat, and beans. My granddad started the farm years ago, and then I followed in my dad's footsteps and am carrying on the third generation.
And that's special, right? I mean, the fact that you get to carry on in those footsteps and in that tradition, there's just not a lot of folks that can say that they've continued on the farming operation.
That's right. It's something I take pride in, and it's also a heavy weight on my shoulders, not to disappoint the prior generations, but I take it in stride and do the best I can do.
And you've been involved in Farm Bureau for many years, right? Going back to Young Farmers and Ranchers, and of course now on the board. Why is that something that's been important to you, to be involved in Farm Bureau?
I got involved 20 plus years ago and developed leadership skills through Young Farmers and saw that this was an organization I wanted to be a part of. And it's so important to what I do every day and what they help us do legislatively in Nashville and in Washington. And I never dreamed back then that it would lead to the opportunities that it has, but I'm thankful that I got active and become a part of it, and I'm proud to say that I'm still a part of it.
So harvest season is in full swing now. Y'all been at it for several weeks now, getting the crop out of the field, and it's always an exciting time, I'm sure, to finally kind of see your work come to fruition, all the things that you've worked so hard throughout the growing season, you finally kind of get to put a bow on. But this season in particular is kind of tough, right? Just with the climate that we're in, the tough farm economy. What goes through your mind when you're harvesting this crop, but you know that you're not making any money?
Well, you know, it's always an exciting time to see what you do have out in the field. And we had an unusual spring this year. We generally average 50-something inches of rain a year here in Gibson County, and we got 40 of those before the end of May. So just statistically speaking, we knew it could possibly turn off to be a dry summer, and it did. So the yields have been somewhat disappointing this fall. But when you're sitting there knowing that the yields are not great and there's not a great price, it just puts a lot of added stress on the fall season to try to squeeze out a profit wherever we can, and it makes it tough.
And this is something that has been building up for a while. I mean, I think for people who aren't necessarily in farming on a day-to-day basis, they're just now starting to hear in the news media that the farm economy is in shambles, for lack of a better term, and they may think that this is something new just for this growing season, but you all have been experiencing hardships in the farm economy for several growing seasons now.
That's right. This is not just a one dry summer deal. This is a culmination of the last 3 years, really, 3 to 4. We've just had low commodity prices, and inflation has drove up our input costs dramatically. And that's just something that all these crops in the field, those bushels pay for those inputs. And when your inputs are way more than you got bushels, you've got a problem. So, and so many of those things are out of our control. We can't help the rain. We can do all we can do to make it grow. We can take care of the crop, but we cannot make it rain to make it produce. And then on the other side of that, when you have diesel at high prices like it is, you have tires, you have parts bills, you have repairs that are just astronomical cost. That all has to come out of the pot at the end of the day, and it makes it tough when the money's just not there.
So I feel like every industry kind of has their lingo, little terms and things that they use that maybe the outside world doesn't know. So when we're talking about inputs, what are you talking about? I mean, that goes into seed, things of that. What all would kind of fall under that umbrella of inputs?
Well, inputs would be anything, I consider anything that it takes to get that crop from start to finish, whether that be seed, chemical, and fertilizer, three major components. But then a lot of times what's forgotten about is our labor expense. We got to have help to do this stuff. Our repairs and maintenance, that's all through the roof. Equipment cost, just the cost of living in general. Going to the grocery store on Friday costs more than it did 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So everything we do involves increased cost. And what we're taking in for our commodities is just not there. The other day I was riding through the field on our combine screen. It shows how much fuel we're burning per hour to harvest. Well, at that day's market price for soybeans and what we just paid for a tanker load of diesel, it was taking 7 bushel of beans to pay for just the fuel in the combine. So that's just one expense out of many. That's not any DEF in the combine. That's not labor in the combine. That's not repairs and maintenance. That's just fuel to make the engine run. So when you're only producing 40 bushel of beans and it's taking 6 or 7 of that just for diesel, that doesn't leave much for everything else. So that was just kind of an eye-opening thing for me, to when you really get down to figuring the bare bones of our budget, what comes out.
I think we really started seeing the inflation post-COVID. That's when we really started to notice it. And at that time, commodity prices were still fairly decent. But in the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years or so, those commodity prices have really flipped, haven't they? I mean, and that's where there is no room to make any money. When you've got the inflation still high and the commodity price is still low, there's just no room to make a profit in there, is there?
No, we cannot make enough bushels to make a profit at the price levels we're at today. And we have, the American farmer is the greatest producer in the world, and anyone involved with our organization or anybody around knows that. But when we're out producing what we are getting rid of, selling, or using here domestically at home, it just drives those prices down. And post-COVID, the world has evolved into the different markets, the different ways it's transported around the world. We pay a lot more for basis now than we did 3-4 years ago after COVID. And what I mean by basis is that's the shipping cost essentially that they charge us at the elevator. They hold a certain level below even the market price to cover their shipping to put it on a barge. Well, ever since COVID, that's been dramatically higher than it ever was before that. So there's just a lot of moving parts that have negatively affected us. You hear the cliche, a perfect storm. That's kind of what it's been. It's been a perfect storm of negative events that's taking the profit off the table for us.
And on top of that, you add in the high interest rates. Most farmers, I mean, you got to take out a loan to put a crop into the ground. And with inflation comes higher interest rates to try and kind of curb that inflation. I mean, y'all are still paying what, 7.5% or so interest rates on the loans you take out for your crops?
Yes, our interest rates are higher than they've been the last 3 years as well. Another component of that storm.
Yeah.
And when you go to take $1 million to put a crop in, well, that's a lot of money for every one of those dollars that we have to do it. So that's a major another major expense per acre that's got to come out of those bushels I keep talking about, you know, and I think sometimes people don't realize that. Those bushels are what floats this whole ship, and there's only so many of those to go around. So when you're looking at dry weather and low prices for those bushels, it just makes it hard to do any good with any of it.
And since we're in the second, third, maybe even for some guys, the fourth year of losing money, when you're going back to the financial institutions trying to take out another loan for next year's crop, a lot of these financial places are probably kind of pausing and really taking into consideration if they should do that, right? I mean, that's what a lot of guys are looking at now.
They are small community banks, which I feel like is the majority of who's doing the ag loans. They're starting to step back and say, wait a minute, I don't know if it's going to be possible for him to pay us back. And so we all have been blessed with good land prices, and which comes equity that we can use to keep going, but you've only got so much of that. And when that's gone, that's when you call the auction company, because you just don't have any choice.
Yeah, I mean, you all have been putting your property up, that equity, as you said, for several years now, and there's not a lot of equity left to put up against these loans now.
That's correct. A banker looks at that every year, and when he knows you've used majority of it last year, well, you go into his office and say, well, what do we do this year? And my personal banker told me the other day, he's been in the ag loan business for 35 years. And he cannot remember the last year his core group of farmers come in and sit at his desk and said, we've had a good year. It's just been a tough time for the last 4 to 5 years. We're just not making any money.
UT put out some numbers within the last week or so, and they're averaging that guys are losing anywhere between $150 to $250 an acre. That's a lot of money. And then I think collectively, last year, for the 2024 year, they project around $290 million is what was lost statewide in the state of Tennessee. And that number's now jumped to, I think, $430 million. I mean, that's just unsustainable. Farmers can't keep doing that and stay in business.
Right, and that's a good word to use, unsustainable. We can't keep doing what we're doing. There won't be enough farmers left. There's only 2% of us in the country now. And so when we lose another big portion of that, there's not going to be enough people to feed us. And I don't think people realize that, but it is not sustainable. And you take an average farm, most farms around me are from 2,000 to 4,000 acres. So let's just say a 3,000 acre farm, if he loses $100 an acre, that's $300,000 at the end of the year he's got to come up with just to farm again. So you basically have borrowed money to work all year, and that's just not something we enjoy doing. We love what we do, but we got to feed our family in the process.
We keep hearing that more than likely a year from now, there's going to be some farmers that are not in business. Is that what you're hearing in your area?
Yes, I believe that to be the case. I know of a few myself who are just going to go ahead and retire, maybe not hardly at retirement age, but they don't want to give up again all their equity they've worked for years just to stay in another year or two. So they're going to go ahead and fold up. And that's a scary thing to me. And that's something that I don't think we want to see happen.
We say it often. I think we say it so much that we don't really fully process what we mean by it, but we say food security is national security, and that really is true. When you think about how important it is to have such a plentiful food supply, you look at other nations, they don't have as good of a food supply like we have here in America, and to think that if we keep losing farmers and we might have to start relying on another nation to supply our food, that's a scary thought to have.
Yes, it is, and we as Americans take for granted we go to the store and it's there, but there's so many processes to get it there, and so many all the way back down to us that I think people take for granted, and we're blessed to have that food supply. But if something doesn't change, I feel like that may very well be threatened, and we don't want to depend on another country for our food.
And you know, when you think about the way of life, I mean, it's a great way of life to farm, and you're third generation. There are a lot of farmers that are multi-generations in the state, in this country, and it's just sad to think that a lot of these guys are finally at the end where they can't continue it and pass it down to that next generation.
That's true, and I hear that a lot. Well, there are third and fourth generation farms who will be fine. But we're spending more to do this than the prior 2 or 3 generations all put together because our costs are just so high. And that's what's got to be addressed. And I feel like if something's not done, there's going to be several multi-generation farms that are out of business.
So if you had a magic wand today, what do you think gets us on the right track to fix this from your perspective as a farmer with literally boots on the ground here, farming day in and day out? What do you need to get this thing fixed to where you can farm and make a profit?
I think one thing would be huge is our energy cost. Everything we touch involves energy, whether it be shipping our product out or bringing fuel in. We need cheaper fuel. We need cheaper inputs altogether. And you know, corn today, December corn, I looked earlier, is $4.40. That's not a great price, but it's not terrible if our inputs were where they needed to be, but it's so out of line with what we're having to pay on the expense side. So I think if we could just rein in some of those costs, it would be a dramatic change. Obviously, we want higher commodity prices, but in the global market, I just don't know how long it's going to take for that to work itself out. But we have to get our costs under control.
You mentioned not knowing how long it'll take for the global markets. Is that a key to it as well, you think, to open more markets to be able to sell these commodities to other nations outside of the United States?
Yes, we've got to broaden our market. I think we've gotten, maybe lax is the right word, and dependent on too few of countries to buy our products. We need to broaden that. We need to explore there's hungry people all over the world, and there has to be a way to use more of our products to feed them and use more domestically. We could be burning more ethanol. We could be using corn more here at home than what we are. And I think that's a vital part of the solution.
And that potentially could lower those energy costs when you think about
Yes.
fuel. I mean, y'all are basically using diesel, but I mean, you use gasoline in
Yes,
some
and
things.
soy diesel.
Yeah.
We could be crushing more beans for that. There's unlimited uses for soybeans, and I feel like we could use more of it here at home than what we do.
In the meantime, though, y'all need help now. I mean, you can't wait another year or two to get relief or wait for these markets to open or wait another year for hopefully input costs to come down. You need financial assistance now, don't you?
We do, and there is no doubt about it. The United States has been taken advantage of across the world in some of our trade negotiations. And so our government is using tariffs to try to level that playing field. And we all understand that, and we agree with it. But that is also detrimental to our markets right now. And until that is settled out, until those trade deals are worked out, we sure need help. We don't want help, but we gotta have it if we're gonna stay in business. We don't want to make our living at the mailbox. We want it out in the rows, as they say. Yeah. But we're gonna have to have some help because the policies that are being enforced right now it's taking money out of our pocket. There's no doubt about it, directly.
And sooner rather than later, right? I mean, what we're talking about is some financial assistance from the federal government. Like you said, the trade policies right now are having an impact on you all now, and hopefully long term that'll benefit you all, but in the short term, you need some financial assistance.
Yes,
and
yes.
You know, there's been some talk that, you know, maybe by March, but March is too late, right? Y'all need it now.
We do. March is too late, and there's going to be guys that are already have their sales bankrupt and gone before March. We need help before the end of the year. And that's going to be crucial to a lot of guys surviving. And a lot of those bankers we talked about, that may determine whether they let them farm again, knowing that assistance is coming. That's going to be another critical part to what they look at on each individual case too.
And obviously, as we've been talking about it, it's having an impact on the farm, but really it has an impact on the broader rural economy because you all buy equipment from dealerships and you know, buy your inputs from mostly probably local stores, co-ops, things of that nature. And so not only is it having an impact on the farm, but it's having an impact in your economy locally as well, right?
Yes. Here in Gibson County, our economy is hugely related to agriculture. When I don't go to town and maybe skip a week of buying parts for something that I could have normally fixed but just decided to make do with. That affects the man working on it. That affects them selling those parts. When we don't go trade vehicles, when we cut back on going out to eat, everything around this part of the world is tied directly to farming. And so it's felt all the way through the economy. When we slow down, everything slows down.
So if President Trump, Secretary Rollins, your congressional representatives, our senators, if they were sitting here right now with us, what would you tell them? What would be your plea to them right now here in this moment?
I would say to please get us some assistance for the time being, to get us over the hump until you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. We support you, we agree with what you're doing, but we have to have some assistance to withstand the process. That would be what I would ask for, and tell them to try to keep us at the forefront of what they're doing and remember what kind of dire straits we're in. And it's a vital part of this country's economy everywhere. But we need help, and we need it fast. And we support you, but that's going to have to be a piece of the pie.
Because for people on the outside looking in that really don't know a whole lot about agriculture, maybe they think, oh, you're just blowing it out of proportion, but this is about as dire as it's been in decades, right? A lot of people talk about the 80s, but in some ways, it's worse than the 80s, right?
It is. We borrow so much more money now than they did in the 80s. Interest rates were terribly high in the 80s, but we're borrowing 5- and 6-fold the amount of money that they did in the 80s. So really, even with our interest rates are high enough, they're nothing like the 80s were, but we're borrowing so much more money that it's almost a worse situation. And so it's just bad times. I started farming full time when I got out of college in '05, so this is essentially my 20th crop, and it's as bad as I've ever seen in my short career, relatively speaking. But we have to have something change. We cannot keep going forward like we've been the last 3 or 4 years.
I know farmers always seem to have a little bit of optimism, and I guess even as dire as things are, you have to have a little bit of optimism that the administration will come through and that commodity prices will get better, that input costs will get better. You have to have a little bit of optimism to keep going and to get up in that combine and harvest these beans behind us, right?
We do, and we're planting wheat right now, and that will be harvested next June, and we're planting that knowing that, maybe things are going to be better over the course of the winter. And I think the Lord give us those type plants to give us a little green to look at in the gloom and doom of wintertime, to remind us that spring is coming and things will be better. They have to get better. We don't have a choice. And I have full faith that they will. He's always took care of us, and he will again. We just have to be patient and see it through.
I mean, that's even more important than any administration, right? Faith in the Lord to get you through.
That's exactly right.
Yes,
That's
sir.
exactly right.
Well, Todd, thanks for talking with us about it. I know things are tough right now, but know that there's a whole lot of people behind y'all and cheering for y'all, and we really appreciate you talking with us.
Thank you. I appreciate what y'all do as well.
Yes, sir.